Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so we are in 2025. My first interview for 2025. I have Jeff Sauer on the line. He's co-founder over at profitschool.com and MeasureU. And Jeff, man, Happy New Year. We're back.
Yeah, Happy New Year. This is great.
Yeah, what a great way to kick off the new year with you on the show, and also, I mean, our topic today: doing more by doing less. So we're going to talk about scaling. We're going to talk about focusing on data. I know as we start our new years, many people are focusing on resolutions or what they could do better or different in their businesses and in their lives. So we're going to have some fun with that today. But let's start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So Jeff, at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's what we do. Jeff, what mission matters to you?
Yeah, it's all about helping individuals struggling with things like technology and data to get a new lease on their career and their business so they can find their way and thrive in this digital world. And so we have two different brands that we focus on. One's called MeasureU.com. And what we do is we help individuals thrive by learning the world of data-driven marketing, and in a way that's accessible. They can get a job offer, job promotion, more responsibility in their career as a result. And then at Profit School, we help small businesses, generally less than 15 people. We help them grow and scale their business without making the common mistakes that will set them back or cause burnout or make the wrong investments. And so it's really all about helping the little guy, the little gal, the little people out there, not even little in that sense, just people who are looking for that new opportunity and need solid mentorship from people who have done it before and people who are really invested in their success.
Awesome. Now, for you, did you start as an entrepreneur? Were you always a data guy? Was that always like one of your interests?
Yeah, so I've always been technical. I have a computer science degree. So yeah, I've always been involved with data, and that was how I got into freelancing. So I was a freelance database engineer doing that type of stuff. But when I started the business, I realized that that's just a very small part of what's going on. And so for a while, I had to sort of abandon that in order to find opportunities to get really good at business. So like the same skills that I learned with learning data and computer science, it's like I had to apply that to being a business owner. And then eventually when I went out on my own, after, all the different career steps, I got back into it. And I said, what better way to showcase what I've learned and to help people than by helping them with the things that I started my career with as well.
I think it's interesting the way you word that. So when you talk about going from being a freelancer, so you're working for yourself for much of your time, and being, for hire versus starting a business and starting to, provide an opportunity for others as well to partake and to create opportunity. Like, talk about that transition, because that's different, like mindset and otherwise functionality. Like it's a different road. It's a different path.
Yeah, it's so different, right? And this is something that's evolved over the years, just trying to really fully understand that transition. So I used to think that a freelancer was more of like an entrepreneur or more of a business owner. And now I've come around almost full circle to saying a freelancer is basically an employee by another arrangement. It's like more of a contractor or it's sort of like acting like an employee. Maybe not legally they're an employee, but it's somebody who's on a team, sort of getting paid by the hour and so on. Well, if they have one person they're working,
there's usually no leverage as a freelancer. Usually,
yeah, exactly. Like it's time for money, just by a different way, right? Like an employee, time for money, freelancer. But then if you start your own business and you get good at that, you have leverage. You can have team members. You can have support. You don't feel like you're always on the clock. You can make higher margins by the investments you do. You can have money. You can earn money in your sleep. Those are sort of the dreams that we all have. Freelancer, I think, it's a stepping stone, but it's not really the end game. From my experience, at least.
For sure. And so essentially, once you go that business route, then you get to work 100 hours instead of 50, right?
Yeah. You get to work 100 hours, so you can say that you're only working 4 hours a week, right? Yep.
But you're in control of your time, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the whole point, right? Is you're trying to you're investing. You're basically trying to create an asset as opposed to time as your asset.
Now, I do want to spend some time talking about you're a fellow podcaster, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the intro, but you're also a host of the Profit School podcast with your co-host Chris Mercer. I'm a huge fan of podcasting, and one of my, as everybody that ever has listened to this show knows, one of my missions is to get everyone to start a podcast. It doesn't have to be through us and our agency, but however they choose to do it. I think that people need to get out there and tell their story. So whenever I have a new podcaster or new to me podcaster on the show, I like for them to talk a little bit about their journey. Like, so what caused you to start the podcast, and where you at? Like, how many episodes in? Like, give us a little bit of a feel.
Yeah, man. So this is it's sort of a crazy story, but I started as a networking conversation between me and a competitor. So Mercer was my competitor. He was just this person who had a similar product that I did, and I never really wanted to talk to him, didn't really want to know him. And then I talked to him, and I was like, this guy is actually pretty generous. He's not being like a competitor. He's being like a colleague.
Wow.
He's fun to talk to. And so we talked for like a year every month. And I was like, man, this is really good. We should turn our conversations into a podcast, because it was very constructive, very like, a good vibe. And so about a year into talking privately, we made it public. We said, well, what do we want to do? We called it Business Unfiltered at first, because we're like, we're just going to talk about business without any agenda. And so we did 50 episodes of Business Unfiltered. And during one of the recordings, I pulled them. I like said, let's stop recording and let's get real. And I said, I want to merge companies with you.
Whoa.
And so after our podcast episode, I decided this is the guy that I want to have as my business partner. And we had a little bit of experience together, and now we're over a year into it as merged companies.
So those are almost like interviews, like you're interviewing each other from the standpoint of, for a business, a merger that you didn't even know, almost in retrospect, right? Like you didn't go into it with that idea, right?
No, it was like 50 first dates or 50 dates with each other to figure out how we approach problems. And we learned that we're better off together. And so we've done 50 more episodes since then. But yeah, it's pretty crazy that about
you've hit the 100 episode mark. What roughly?
We recorded the 97th one today. And they'll go out in February. So yeah, so we're getting
congratulations, by the way. That's no easy feat. Most podcasts they quit or for whatever reason stop recording way before that. So that's amazing. What do you think has kept both of you in the game and kind of going strong?
It's that funny thing is we create topics from conversations from earlier episodes. So we'll be in the middle of an episode and be like, hey, we should do a topic on this one. And so we'll write it down, and we haven't run out of topics yet. And I think I seeded 30 topics, and now we have hundreds of topics. And it's like, we always have something to talk about, and we always just keep on maintaining it. It's pretty easy for us to do because it's an audio only podcast. So we can do it, without being presentable. We just sort of go together, and having a partner makes it motivating. I did it by myself. I had another podcast I did for 100 episodes. And then at number 100, I said, I'm taking a break, and I never came back to it. And the main difference is that this one, I think there's just I don't think we could just do it forever, because there's so many topics to talk about, and we can bring in stories from our internal workings. We can bring in stories from our past. It's just a really fun way to discover and get to know each other, and create content at the same time.
To give us a flavor for the content, like maybe talk about one of the episodes or a story from it, or just to give, an idea, because I definitely want my audience to definitely go check out your show. So, but give us an idea of what of a topic.
Yeah. So at Profit School, our operating system comes down to three different things: offers, products, and systems. And so we try to have something rooted in one of those three things. We think that's the three components of a core small business. You have to have those three teams or functions in your business. So you need to make offers in front of people. You need to have a product that somebody buys, and you have to have a system to make sure you don't fall apart. And so everything we talk about falls into one of those three things generally. Like we did one about handling conflict. We were talking about conflict, and we had a conflict with each other. And so we decided, let's do an episode about how do we handle conflict with each other. And we have a straightforward agenda. It's like, you define your problem, you talk about the strategies of solving that issue, and then you talking about tactics and specific case studies of how you've done that or how you might do it moving forward. And then you end the podcast. It goes about 30 minutes. And we actually don't over rehearse it, because we find that it gets, the vibe, like we drop surprises on each other because we're not overly rehearsed. We just have a topic and we go for it. And so it's dynamic. And the thing is, sometimes we leave meat on the bone because we went in a whole different direction. That's when we had the next episode. And so it really works well for us, is that it's like, there's always something that we can continue to go through. So yeah, anything around the offers, products, or systems of a business, we consider to be fair game. And we do a pretty good mix between them.
So jumping around a little bit here, profitschool.com and MeasureU, how do those two coexist, like, or work in tandem, or how do those two function?
Yeah. So our core business was teaching people how to do Google Analytics, Google Ads, that type of stuff. When we merged, that became MeasureU, and that's
Mhm.
like our baby. That's the majority of the revenue, majority of our longevity in the industry. And then what would happen was people would come and they take a Google Ads course from me or a Google Analytics course from Mercer,
Mhm.
and then they'd say, "Hey, I'm pretty good at this. Now I got promoted at my company, and I'm like in charge of measurement. I'm in charge of the ads, you
Yeah.
know." And they'd say, "Hey, I'm getting people requesting me like neighbors and cousins and stuff to do their ads for them. I'm going to
Mm.
start a business." And how do I start a business? And I was like, "Well, actually, I had an agency that I was a part of for 15 years and very
Mm.
successful. We sold it in 2021. I'll tell you how to build an agency or how to be a more efficient freelancer, how to
Mm.
price your products." And all these different conversations people had, because it was like an ascension. It was like
Yeah.
once they get done with courses on how to learn a skill, they need the business skills.
Mhm.
And so for a while we would put business courses into our core academy, but we realized that not everybody really wanted to learn business, only a small fraction of people. So we said, let's take all of our business content and let's create a different brand for that,
Mm.
so we can both attract a new audience there and make that the place they go to once they graduate from MeasureU, a certain segment of people. And so naturally we sort of turned them into two different brands, and that's how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And especially because you came from that background, like you did it. So when you're teaching, or when you're creating the content, and you're talking to a freelancer, somebody that's going to do a business or otherwise, like, you did it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we are the avatar for the people we teach, right?
Yeah.
And which really, I think it comes across in how we
Makes it
teach. And
authentic,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Mm. And so talk a little bit more about the courses, like the courses and like the actual content, and what people come to you for.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny. I taught this to the employees of my agency because there was no good courses out there, and I had
Hmm.
to learn it on my own. But
Yeah.
as we scaled, we grew from 5 employees to 50 employees, and
Mm.
we were hiring like 3 people a week. And
Yeah.
it's like, you got to do something. So I started doing an internal training program. Then that became an external training program in Minneapolis, where I'm from originally. And
Mm.
then a university came up to me and said, "Hey, can you do this at the university?" So I started
Mm.
teaching digital marketing and ads and stuff like that and analytics at the university level. And then I started doing it online. So I basically just
Mm.
kept on going. I really wanted to be a digital nomad in 2015. So I basically quit the agency world day to day and started creating online courses, because that was the only way I could travel the world and have a business and have income. So I created courses and traveled to about 40 different countries over the course of
Mm.
5 years while building the business. And now it's evolved to, like, they used to just be pre-recorded courses that I'd update every one or 2 years. And
Mm.
now we actually produce them live once a year, and then you can watch the recorded version throughout the year. And then the time the next year comes around, we just updated it to whatever the current version of that technology is. And so
Mm.
the courses are usually between 10 and 20 hours. They're very thorough, from absolute beginner. If you've never done this before, you get the beginning part
Mm.
all the way through the advanced techniques in one course. And they're really around the skills that people see on every job description out there.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of when somebody reiterates and year over year update their content and make sure that, they're bringing the most up to date, information versus, things move pretty fast.
Yeah.
How do you stay up to date? Like, how do you and your team stay up to date to make sure that year over year you're bringing the best, quality,
Yeah.
high value content you can?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I'd say that we have people who we provide services. So we have done
Hmm.
for you services that we do for clients, just a handful, just to keep us fresh. So the people
Hmm.
who are teaching it are doing it. And so they recognize when the interfaces change. They recognize when the
Mm.
policies happen. And actually every month, and this is anybody who goes to MeasureU and signs up for our free toolbox, every
Hmm.
month we give you a what's new. So we give you an update of what's new on every single major platform of the Google
Mm.
platform. So if you just watch that one video, you'll always be within a month of what the current things are.
Mm.
So we do it from practicing. And then the thing is, like, when you've done it for a long time, you get into maintenance mode, which is, in a little bit of time, you can make a big impact, because all you're
Yeah.
doing is just knowing where to go. You look for the updates and you look for what's changed, and then you're basically folding that into your existing framework. Now, the
Mm.
main difference between us and other teachers is that we teach off of a framework, not off of an interface. So I'm
Mm.
not teaching you Google Analytics. I'm teaching you Google Analytics so you can implement a framework. And that
Mm.
framework is ultimately your strategy. And a strategy is ultimately what makes you stand out in the marketplace, in our opinion, and makes you effective.
So you mentioned aligning products, offers, and systems essentially for growth.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about like that ideology and how you really came up with it.
Yeah. So it's funny. That's just how we organized internally when we merged. I'm a marketing person, and that's my background. And so I was in charge of when we merged. I was in charge of the marketing, sales of the business, and then my partner is really a systems guy. He's
Mm.
really heavily involved in making sure that everything works, automation,
Yeah.
all the stuff that the back end, so that everything is just running smoothly, running the team, running meetings, all that
Mhm.
stuff. And so he's more on the system side. And then there's this third element of what is the product we sell. So that was a pretty natural. And we both were product people. And so we sort of had responsibilities overlapping between these things.
Mm.
And then we also have a director of product who's one of our long team members who's also overseeing the product. And it just made sense to organize our team that way. It's not
Mhm.
overly complicated. We don't need to have 7 meetings a week
Yeah.
about every department. It's just those 3 things make us work, make the world go round, and they're so interconnected that
Mm.
just having those 3 things was sort of like the simplest operating system you could have for your business. Now, at my old agency, we implemented a lot of complicated management things, and when you
Mm.
fill out the org chart and you look at all the things they recommend, you need $100,000 people. You need to have 20 of them, right? So it's
Yeah.
like suddenly you have to have the payroll of like $10 million company in order to survive. And it's like for companies that are not in that level, it's like, what's the minimum they need? So more
Mm.
minimalist versus maximalist. And
Mm.
that just totally hits home to me, because having been a digital nomad for 5 years and having lived out of a suitcase and having stuff in storage, it's like you have to be pretty minimalist. It's like, do we really need this or not? So we
Yeah.
went more for the simplicity angle. And that's sort of how we're always just trying to chop it down to what's the simplest way to do it, as opposed to the most complex way to do it. And we think every business should get to that point
Mm.
until they really need complexity, I guess, which
Mhm.
will you ever need it? I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned working with a handful of clients still on the agency side. It seems to me like when you do an assessment or you're bringing in a new client, like it's going to be one of those, even if that's just how you mentioned you organize internally. But it seems like usually one of those levers something can be approved, whether it's the product, the offer, or the systems. Is that what you find? I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of like somebody at your agency. Like there's always something that I don't want to say is off, but can be approved that's going to help them with their overall objectives.
Yeah, 100%. And it could be more than one as well, but
Yeah.
if a company is struggling, it's one of those 3 things.
Mhm.
And it's, you can even go deeper than that. Like, so we actually I created something called Profit Score, and it's like
Mhm.
profitscore.ai, and you can do a little assessment. I think it's 12 questions, and I'll
Mhm.
tell you whether you need help with your offers, products, or systems based on those 12 questions. But usually somebody's like, yeah, I'm falling apart at the seams. That means they have a
Mhm.
systems problem. If
Mm.
somebody says, I'm burnt out and I'm working harder than ever, yet I don't have any money, that's an offers problem. They're not
Mm.
making offers to enough people, and they don't have a pipeline so they can charge what they're worth. And if
Mm.
somebody says, yeah, man, I'm constantly like undercharging for what I do, or
Mhm.
like my clients don't respect me, that's usually a product problem, because they don't actually know how to price their products, or they don't really understand what their product result's supposed to be. And so they treat
Mm.
themselves like a commodity as opposed to something that's premium.
Mm. And so how do you go, and I know each one of these are going to be different. Each one of these businesses are going to be different, but I'm
Yep.
guessing you probably narrow in on 1 or 2 and you work through that before you go through. Cause when you just now said all of those, I feel like everybody can be like, that's me, that's me, that's me. It's one way
Yeah.
or another, right? On some level or percentage of answering that question.
Yeah.
So how do you go about like chipping away?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. So at Profit School specifically, we have a mastermind where we cycle through those topics. So somebody
Mm.
joins, and these are usually individuals or
Mhm.
small partnerships,
Yeah.
less than 5 people, maybe 10 people, and they all have pretty similar problems, which is that all those things are a problem. The problem is that they're all problems, right?
They all
So,
are
yeah.
on some percentage or variation. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And the urgency around working those problems isn't, you can't just work on one. You have
Yeah,
to work on all of them. So we
yeah.
cycle through those.
Mhm.
Every week we talk about either your offers, products, or systems. And then we use our internal stuff we've developed over the course of the last 20 years and from our previous lives and previous companies into like, here's the easy way to solve that thing. So it's like break fix of problems using frameworks that we've already had to use for our successful companies. And so a lot of it's just diagnosing what the problem is and then recognizing that that's a real problem and that it's something that does need to be addressed, and then sharing not only how we have solved that problem, but also the tools we used, and also how the other people in the group have solved it. So it's like a good camaraderie thing. It's a good, you're with a group of people who are going through the same things. So you have peers and you have validation pretty much immediately versus struggling on your own to do it.
Can you give an example of that? Like you don't have to name a company if you don't want to or anything like that, whatever. I understand some people want their privacy, but like an example of like somebody goes into the thing and then like, and the result was like, can you give an example?
Yeah, I mean, common one is, a lot of people that we work with are agencies, like small, freelancers turning into agencies where they have clients and they have one really big client and then they don't have anybody else. And they're so busy with their client that they're like, nobody knows who I am. I have no pipelines. I have no sales calls. And so we're just like, well, have you ever sent an email letting people know have you ever made an offer? Do you have an email list? Have you posted like what you do on LinkedIn? Like, have you done anything to publicize what you're working for? Are you just sort of like this person who's at the beck and call of your clients and not doing anything? And it's like, okay, so we have this thing called a power planner where if somebody's saying, and if they're coming to the mastermind week after week and they haven't done anything to promote themselves or to like make an offer to somebody, we're like, don't come back next week unless you have an email opt-in form on your site. And then if they collect email addresses, okay, don't come back unless you've come back when you've sent this email. Now we're not that harsh, right? Because
I like it, man. Tough love. Do not come back. You don't call me. You lose my number if that newsletter isn't started. All right, man. No.
And we give them the accountability, right? Yeah. So they have accountability where they would actually come in, and then eventually that becomes a habit for them. Where they don't want to come empty-handed. They want to come back when they've done these things.
No, it's embarrassing. You don't want to come to a class without your homework every day. Come on.
And when you see people who are thriving, guess what? They all have the same characteristic. Yeah. They don't overanalyze it. They do it.
You're competitive too. Yeah.
People who are thriving almost always are people who just don't make excuses and they just do action, and they're not worried about perfection. Perfection often gets in the way, like, oh, I can't send cold email because it's not perfect. I can't reach out to somebody because it's not perfect. You're never going to have a perfect condition. And ultimately, if you want a perfect condition, you probably should go back to being an employee in that case.
Well, Jeff, we're live today, January 2nd, first day of recording for me in the new year. What's in the plan? What's next for you for 2025? Give us the vision.
Yeah. So we want to be a well-oiled machine internally that serves our customers, people who are either trying to get into the marketing and measurement world and learn their skills there, or people who have a business but are struggling with things we've just talked about, right? We want to set the standard for how businesses are run. My goal is that when people, and this sounds crazy, but I've already done it once, is that I want people to teach the methods that we do at Profit School at business school. Wow. I want to be one of the books they recommend. I want people to implement the ops system before they go and do something like Traction, before they go do something like Scaling Up or any other, these other brands that are out there doing that. Yeah. Because those things are geared towards companies of 50, 100 plus people. And I feel like a lot of companies can't even get to that point because the advice is not ready for them yet. I want to be the one that they say, hey, any business under 20 people, under 15 people, you got to read Jeff and Mercer's book. That's the book you need. And that's the one that you're going to go on. And that will get you to the point where you can decide if you want something else or not. But most people won't decide they want something else because we got what they need.
Amazing. Jeff, how do people follow up? How do they learn more? How do they connect?
Yeah, so we're available on all the channels. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@MeasureU, MeasureU.com. You can sign up for our email list right on the whole thing. We got a free community there. We have about 50 different free tools right when you sign up. You can get access to tons of workshops. I mentioned knowing what's new in the digital marketing world. You get that email every single week from us about that. So signing up there is a great way to know about everything we're doing. And you get the benefit of that free community. Same thing for Profit School. So profitschool.com, you can sign up get your email address. We'll email you. We have our podcast. We do some live trainings. We are, teaching people our system. We have a mastermind group where people can just jump right in. And for a pretty reasonable price, they get a whole year of coaching from Mercer and myself every single week. And so, we just live to serve our community and help people get the results they're looking for. We don't think we're not perfect by any means, but we're just continuing to work it out. And so we're about a year into our merger of our companies, and 2025 is the year that people are going to start to be like, yep, this is the option for us. This is where we're going, is we're implementing Profit School. We're implementing what they teach at MeasureU.
Amazing. Loving the merger, loving the podcasting side, creating and leading with value. It's just a great story, one that I'm happy to bring to my audience. Speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration that helps you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Jeff, man, really appreciate you coming on the show today. And I'm pulling for you in 2025. I'm looking forward to watching the continued growth that you and Chris are having. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.